So today, what we're going to do as a lab portion is we're going to get us through the trunk muscles. So that was also on last week's module. And then this week's module, you guys working on the upper extremities in that part. And then next week, we do the upper extremities in class and then the lower extremities. When I look at the trunk muscles, you see there on the term list, you all have a term list? Good. Make sure. Huh? Need one? All right. All right. So when we look at a term list, we're looking at the third column on the muscle. First we got the facial muscles, and now we go down and it says trapezius. See that thing called trapezius? If you have booklets, it's booklet 3 now. But we already saw a booklet 3 where we actually did the physiology. So when we look at with muscles, I'm trying to sort of make sense and group muscles around a little bit the way hopefully it makes the most sense. And I often do it by function. Because clinically it's like, muscles move things around, right? And so it's like, well, who's moving the head around? Who's moving the neck around? And then, who's moving the arm this way and who's moving the arm this way? And then we talk about where would the muscles be attached. And because at the end of the day, it's just pulleys and things like that. It's not all just names and lists of names. It's a functional thing. It's in your body, actually. It's very, very physical, even though it's a science class. So when I look at the trapezius, I look at the first muscle there that's most superficial. Right here, when you grab your shoulders right here on the medial to the bone, you're going to grab the trapezius. If you squeeze hard, it'll probably hurt a little bit. It's like, damn, I'm really tight right now. It's one of those muscles that carries the stress. And the trapezius, right here, goes from the spine here, and then it goes out to the shoulder blade. So it wraps, and you can see that when you look at this thing down in here, the description. O stands for origin. I try to put as few words on these slides as possible, so I just abbreviate all the stuff so I can do most pictures. So O is origin. So when you look at origin, it starts at the EOP. We did that today, the bump of the back of the head. That's one big muscle that attaches there. And then it goes down through the SP spinous process. SP spinous process. We also did that today. These bumps back here, all the way down to below. To where here, the 12th rib, all the way down here. So this is the whole span of that muscle. It also says the nuchal ligament. And I put that in, we didn't study that, but when you look at the neck, you see here, there is this ligament going backwards that muscles can attach into it. Because you actually have a curve here, it should go a little bit more forward. It's like there's a curve here like that. So you have to have space where muscles can attach. Because you've got a lot of muscle going on back here. So a lot of work when you have to hold up that head the whole day. And then, so that's the origin. And again, origin as a term is where the muscle sort of is founded in, the foundation of the muscle. And then insertion is where it attaches and what moves it around. So when you look at the insertion here, it's the acromion, so the tip of the shoulder, and then the spine of the scapula here, and in front the clavicle also, which is very interesting. So it kind of wraps forward a little bit. So it goes all the way here. It's like a trapeze. Oh, that's the name, trapeze. Trapezium. Trapezius, that's the name. So I like this muscle a lot, of course. It's the my boss is mad at me muscle. Can I squeeze it over? Actually, there's one deeper that's even more evil for the stress. And then A stands for action. Action means what happens when a muscle contracts, when a muscle shortens. So the head extends, the head tilts to the same side, and the head rotates to the opposite side. So what you can do with these things, you can sort of visualize these. So when you look at the muscle attached here, it probably bring the head back. That seems pretty logical, right? If it's in the back, it contract, probably bring the head back. If it's in the front of contract, probably bring the head forward. So that's sort of, it's fundamental, but it's very important to look at it structurally like that. Because then it's something that makes sense. When we look at then tilt the head to the same side, yeah, look, if I have this one contract here, my head is going to go this way. So that makes sense too. Tilt to the same side. The other one, rotate the head to the opposite side. That's a little bit more tricky. So because you have all these different fibers, they don't all have to contract, right? So you can have multiple different motions. So tilt the head down makes sense, but when you actually want to move the head over to the opposite side, you can also pull on here, and that pulls on the nuchal ligament. You can sort of see how that turns. When these contract, that turns, actually when these contract, that turns the head to this side, like the way he's standing. You can visualize that a little, like these fibers over here contract, that whole spine moves over that way, turns it. Yeah?
Can you explain that part again? Because like the origin's back here and it's contracting. Can you just explain that how the different turns and like where?
Yeah, and it's very important actually also to say we're gonna have this muscle come back because it also moves the shoulder blade around. Right now we're moving the head around. All right. So I want to, because actually the origin insertion is twisted for that one with that, and if that what you picked up on. But when I look at the fibers attached here to go into here, and they contract, you can see how that can pull on these vertebrae and pull that neck over the head over there. So they contract here, and then they pull that, they rotate that neck over to the other side, so the face looks to the other side when these contract.
And when it's tilting to the same
And then
side.
these contract. That's attached up here, right? And then these contract, then the head goes more sideways. Does that make sense? Visually?
Part of me is thinking that because this is the origin, like up here is the origin, that this should kind of.
You correct. If you actually really go like deep into the technicalities of it, it flipped it there. This becomes the origin, this becomes the insertion.
Okay.
If you really go very technical into terminology. But in the books, that's because the main thing that the trapezius actually does, more than moving this, although that's arguable, right? More than moving this. But again, that's arguable. But what's definitely what it does, it has a lot of functions on the shoulder blade, for sure. And that's, I think they probably chose that formation because it's more functionally important what it does here.
So with your origin and insertion, like if the muscle can push it in different directions, is it kind of like, not that the origin insertion are moving, but like the angle?
They can flip.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, they can flip.
Okay.
The biggest example is down here. You've got a muscle that goes from the spine here, and it goes all the way down to the femur. And when that contracts, it's the flexor. It's the hip flexor. So then this is the origin, this is the insertion. But if you're sitting laying on the back and doing sit-ups, this is stable, and then this moves. So that technically becomes the origin, and that becomes the insertion, technically speaking.
Okay.
When we want to look at the real, that's hard with anatomy a little because that's the definition, and then it's not quite always like that. That's where that is a little, but it's very important discussion because it's very important for the brain to have it straight ahead. And I'm not sure if I write an article and use the old O&I inverted, if they will argue with me or not. I have seen like, the psoas is the big one where it's switching.
So basically, it's whatever muscle that's moving at the
Yeah, whatever the muscle's pulling on, what it is pulling on, the end that's moving the bone, that's the insertion.
And the part that's
The
still.
stuff that's stable where it's pulling where it's pulling to.
So it don't matter if I'm moving my bottom arm, this part is going to be the one that's stable.
Yeah. No, most likely it's a proximal point. When you move in a more distal part.
Yeah.
Most likely. Right.
What you're
Absolutely.
saying makes sense.
Yeah, that's what
Basically,
it
every
does.
time he said, it's basically like this part isn't moving at that moment. So don't count that part as,
Yeah.
the extra.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those places. It's great if you understand it. If it's not quite going in,
Here.
it's one of those things you just memorize a little bit. You just know origin insertion, there are two attachments. The first, they are attachment places. And then we figure out why are they called origin and insertion. On the homework, you will write those in. That way we have an exercise. On the test, I point to it and you tell me what it is. That's it. So you don't need all the integration. All right? But to understand it, I think is important. And when I look at this model here, that's the where I can see the trapezius. So that you guys have one of those on the bench. So you can see there how it goes wraps around to the front.
The trapezius is on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just on this is all both sides. Yeah, most of these muscles that we're dealing with now are
Both
bilateral.
sides. Okay.
Then on the next one on the list is, this is my absolute favorite, of course. The sternocleidomastoid. So another way we can name a muscle is by attachments. The sternocleidomastoid is named by its sternum clavicle mastoid process attachments.
Can I ask you what it do?
Huh?
Can I tell them what it do?
Yeah.
Okay, basically, it's similar to the shoulder one, but it's like when you turn your neck back and forth, it's like helping your head move back and forth, right?
Yep. It helps. It is sort of the trapezius in the SCM. We call it the SCM, sternocleidomastoid, for short. It's just too long to talk about it like that. So the SCM is sort of the front one that moves the head around, and the trapezius in the back is the back one that moves the head around.
So they're probably moving at the same time.
Yeah, they often work synergistically,
Oh, there's that.
but that's that word, right? The other thing is what I wanted to say before. If the more superficial the muscle is on the surface, the more joints it's usually going to cover, the more bigger motions it's usually going to be doing. It might not be the stabilizer part of the motion, but it's the execution part,
Okay.
right? So you would not want to use a trapezius to stabilize these little joints in here. You want to use deep muscles to do that, and then the more superficials, we can move the bigger portions around. The deep ones can move these around, that's cool, they can help with that. And they often fail, and that often gives really big problems. Just because the other ones are superficial doesn't mean those are the ones that are failing. But the more superficial in general, the more of like global bigger motions we have to happen. Okay? So the SCM, it's interesting when you actually have it attached here, when it's contracted here, it extends the neck. It doesn't bring it forward, it brings it back. It tilts it this way. When it pulls here, it's sort of like the fulcrum is like here, it like pulls it back so the nose goes on. And it tilts the head again, like you said, it's the same sort of in the back, the front and the back. It tilts it to the same side and rotates to the opposite side. And again, you visualize that, you contract here. The way you can do it, you can actually do it this way. You can take a motion and hold that motion, like resist it. Like I don't want to rotate if I rotate my head and I resist my rotation, I don't let me rotate this, I resist it, I can feel this coming out right here. And so the muscle that is doing the motion will bulge out. It's not doing the motion, it's isometric. And so it bulges out and you can feel it. Very often you can do that. And so you can feel, here is a little part, next to is a little part. There's these two parts, you can feel those. And then it goes all the way up to the back.
There's a bunch of these drawings in there that have the red and the dots. Can you just explain how to read those?
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you asked because I don't point those out enough. What I did is when I did those, I'm a massage therapist and other bodywork stuff. And these are trigger point patterns. So sometimes in classroom we talk about it and so when somebody has pain around the eye, headachy type pain, actually a big one is the trapezius. That's huge. Somebody has pain going into the temple like that, and you good with your hands, and it's your family, and you don't make money with it. These are patterns where you can see the X's very often they're pressure points. And then if there is like extra force in there, extra pressure point, extra hard nodules in those, it can create headaches that go up to the temple. And so you know, so I have all the muscles where I can find them. I put a picture of that in there because then I can also use it to show people those things. And if you go with your hands, I can show you too. Now we're back in the classroom. Just ask me. It's not that hard to do. And I wanted to broaden that knowledge a little bit too in people. So I think stress is one of those things that gets us a little bit. This one is harder to work than the trapezius, but you know I put it in anyway, and I can show people that's not a problem. So then the next one are the scalenes. You see that scalenes? Oh, the SCM is right here. See right here. And then the next one is the scalene. And the scalenes, the name comes from the scales. So there are like 3 rows of muscles that pull down, like here, 1, and then 2, and then 3. And you can see how this thing here comes out, and this thing in between here, that's the nerve that comes out of there, or many of the nerves, not just one. It's called the brachial plexus that goes through this scalene muscle. And so that makes it significant, clinically very significant. These muscles are here in the front. And they're attached to, TP stands for transverse process. That's these bumps on the side. All right, it goes from the side of C3 all the way here. Well, actually, depending on who you're talking to. See, this goes a little higher even. C3 down to C7. And then what they do is they anchor into the ribs. So they start here and go down and anchor into the ribs. First and second rib, right in here. So they're very deep. So when you can't come from the back because you're touching the trapezius when you come from the back. But if you come from the front and you go right by the clavicle, ooh, you feel that in there. It's tense. It's a bit tense very often. Those are the scalenes. If it's very fiery, if you poke it hard, it's fiery. Those are the nerves you're going over. You can feel them. Something. If you're really tense, I've just felt one go down and shut down the arm. It's a little tense over here in my scalenes. Watch out. My scalenes are on fire. And this is actually one of the places where people get carpal tunnel syndrome from. So if they have tension and pain down here, it could be from up here. Because when you press on a nerve and you squeeze it hard enough, it's going to hurt and fire, but the brain thinks that the pain comes from the end point of that nerve. So if you have a nerve that goes from here down to the hand, when it gets squeezed up here, the brain still thinks the pain is down here, even though the pain's from here, but the brain thinks the problem is here, but it might be up here. So that's where it's a little tricky. So in the old days, people with carpal tunnel, because if you hold your palm down to type, you're using these muscles really strongly all the time. And so a nerve goes through here too. And then a nerve goes through here. And then you type. All these muscles go through here, through this tunnel. There's a tunnel here. It's a very tight compartment. And these muscles have to go through here. And you type a lot. That creates heat, friction. When you do that, it creates friction. And so what they would do when this hurts, they would cut this open to make room. Even sometimes when let's say you type and you hold up your shoulders the whole day because you're not resting your elbows, these are going to get really tight. You might get really, really stiffy. The ribs get really, too much holding up energy. Then the nerves get squeezed here. It's not even here. It's up here. So you got to be analytical about these things. So I'll try to point out a few little things to help you fill in what this is mean,
Is it, so if this is the normal anatomical position,
Yes.
you turn this way, the radius is.
Yeah, you pronate, right?
When you pronate, you're pinching something to get pinched in there to remain like that too long.
Yeah, when you pronate, absolutely. When you pronate, you're bringing your palm down, meaning your radius and your ulna cross over. That's actually why we have an anatomical position to explain things. But these muscles in here is where a nerve goes through the muscle, pierces through the main muscle that does this motion. What a thing. Right? It pierces through right there. And if you always hold it down, it's like you're always sitting, you're always squatting the whole time. This go way around. These muscles get tired. That's why, typing on computers is a sport. In my clinic, those are like athletes. The way we're sitting and squeezing his body into these typing machine things and all of that, and then, we got to be very gentle about that. And so the scalenes is one place where we have a lot of trouble with that nerve coming out. So if you're, and it's, if you feel like, oh, it's crampy down here, and you go touch here, and you go like, oh, this is really fiery and it's really nervy, maybe there's a connection. That's how you use this information flow, Because you want to be as well informed about your own body as possible, so you can, you have to, the best information when I interview a patient about what's going on with them is what they tell me. They usually know what's going on. Most of the time they have an idea. Especially when I tell them, it's kind of crooked down here. And it's like, yeah, it felt crooked. If I don't use like some word nobody understands, And so the patient has a lot of good understanding and knowledge. I had this one lady, she was 92 when she came in. And the year before, somebody pulled it. No, I don't know. I don't think somebody did on purpose. But she thought she stayed on the chair. She fell on the ground. She broke her hip. And then once the hip was fixed and all that, so they sent her in to see me. And she says, my back really hurts when I sit on my couch to watch TV. And, it started hurting when I took the pillow away from the couch. And I looked at her and go like, how about you sell the couch? Must be the couch. She looked at me and go, I'm not going to sell my couch. I said, no, maybe put the pillow back. Maybe that'll solve the problem. She's like, oh, that's a good idea. She solved her own, and that was the classic. And that was, that solved the problem, basically. But the patient has a lot of understanding. And so you take all this information and use it as much as you can. All right, so anyway, we're moving right along, or slowly along here. We got these I'm not sure I have them in the picture booklets. I have these longus colli. I think I also have them on canvas. Deep ones. I talk about them, but I want you to be exposed to having heard about them and learning a little bit, but we're not needing to learn those all here for the test. It gets very intricate. I mean, you've got a lot of layers of muscle. The top here is the trapezius, then we go, semispinalis, splenius, and then multifidi. It goes deep in here. We don't have to go through all of them from studying perspectives. But the one that I put there, I think I put the erector spinae, did I? Yeah, I did. And the erector spinae are muscles in the back. And yes, they're really hard to see here. They're more like on the diagrams. So that's another hint for the lab test. If they're really not that visible, again, it's probably not on the test. But the back here has a lot of muscles going up and down. And most of the time, they start down here-ish, in the hip bone area, and they move up. And so we have the whole structure is known as the erector spinae, but we have some that are very medial, right on the spine of the spine, medial. We call them spinalis. Because they're right on the spine. That's how I remember that. I mean, literally, I must have some dyslexia or something. It's not that easy. So these mnemonics really help. And then if you go a little bit to the side, you've got one muscle that is really long. It goes all the way from the bottom to the top. The middle one. They call them the longissimus. It's very long. And again, they start down here, they reach up. When you look functionally, one of the things that they really do, they extend the spine, of course. But they also make sure when you bend forward, they hold up the back so you don't fall down. So they sort of let go. So they also use that. And then lastly here, the third wheel leg is the iliocostalis. And that's the easiest with another term. Because ilium is the top of the hip here, where the baby sits on. That's the ilium. And costal. Costal, if you see the word costal, means rib. Wherever you see the word costal, you're thinking rib. Costal is rib. So they go from the hip bone to the ribs. They reach more laterally. And collectively, we call them the erector spinae because they're the most superficial ones. They hold our spine upright. They hold it erect. And that's the terminology for that. I think that's good enough for that musculature there. And then we get into, well, this is really the cool stuff, but we don't really do too much of that when it comes to the anatomy portion. But the deepest one on the low back, particularly muscle, is the multifidus muscle. And if people have ever had back pain, that muscle is most likely not functioning as well. And you see, this is an MRI study from a medical doctor's office. With a person that had long-standing low back pain. And you see, this is meat. That is good meat. This is meat with a lot of gristle in it. Not recommended to eat. Oh, it's human anyway. But it's fatty. You see the white? That's fatty stuff. That's not functioning muscle tissue. That's like flabbery muscle tissue. This person is not fat necessarily. Maybe, I don't know. But fatty infiltration in the muscle just means you're using non-functioning tissue compared to contract. I mean, fat has its own function, but not contracting. It doesn't do that. So we know that that's weak. That's strong. The strength of that multifidus is one of the most important things to prevent low back pain. So that's just clinically where that's important. But I'm going off script here. But that's why I put it in there. Intercostals. Let's go to the intercostals. Let's see. We're looking at the breathing. So one of the things that we need to do in the trunk, we need to be able to breathe. Because, and what is breathing actually as a function? When you look at, for us, it's bringing air in and bringing air out, right? That's breathing. When we look deeper, we need to think about how we're going to do that. The body is really cool. The body has these lungs. The lungs are passive. They can't do anything. But they attach them to the ribs. They glue them to the ribs. With a suction. Because it's cool to have a little fluid inside a membrane so they can rub against each other, but there's no friction. So it's gliding. So it's really cool. So it's a suction. And so that and then down in here, we have a diaphragm that's like a dome-shaped thing, like a parachute-shaped muscle that goes upwards and attaches basically around the edge. It's one of the round muscles we have in the body. Most muscles go this way or not this way. There's just a very few areas where we have muscle this way. Diaphragm, separating the chest from the trunk below, from the gut. That's one of those muscles. And so the diaphragm is the next muscle we're talking about. But so when we want to now breathe and inhale, we have to do anything we can to make this bigger. So we can bring it to the side or we can bring it downward. Upward, a little bit. If we really have to grasp for it, then we can pull up here a little bit too and fill all the little spaces up. And so what we do, we have primary breathing muscles. And so one of the primary breathing muscles is the external intercostal. And so we have an external intercostal. And you can see the external intercostal here on the chest plate. You see the chest plate. You see here on the side, you have these structures that go up and down on the outside. These little from rib to rib, on the lateral side. Those are the external intercostals that pull the lower rib upward and make the chest wall bigger. And inhale. Then the other ones we have are the internal intercostals, and they are opposite direction. They go this way. And when they contract, they pull the chest downward more. And so they're not helping with inhalation. They're doing the opposite. They're helping with exhalation. So the internal intercostal, inter means in between, costal again, ribs. That's where that term comes from again. The internals help you exhalation. When you forcefully breathe out, the external intercostal help you breathe in. And then the other one we got there is the diaphragm. And the diaphragm, oh, I should have taken all the organs out. If you take all the organs out of this, you have a diaphragm. Oh, actually, yeah, see, here's diaphragm. You see that red stuff? That's diaphragm. So when you're on the table, take it apart and then put it back together. So I don't have to do it. But the diaphragm is right here on top, above the liver. And you can see it there. And so the diaphragm is the muscle that pulls, that pulls the space, makes it bigger inferiorly. That's the way to say it. That makes it bigger inferiorly and enhances that volume and the air can flow in. It's like a suction. You know, next time you open a freezer bag or suction, it goes, it's the same thing. If you increase that space, the air wants to flow in. You push it out, the air wants to flow out. Oops. You squeeze this, the air wants to flow out. You make this bigger, the air wants to flow in. You change your pressures. And then they technically talk about it as numbers and all so forth, but you know. All right. There's a diaphragm. See right here. Parachute muscle. It's good to learn how to breathe using your diaphragm, especially in our culture where it's like, you know, you gotta suck your gut in. It's like, it's okay. Maybe, you know, I don't know, but it's unfortunately that military breathing is a little bit stifling because oxygen is an important molecule. Like you need oxygen to make energy, very important. And so the more we can get into the system, the better. And so the volume that we create going down with the diaphragm is a much bigger change. We can get much more air in if we do belly breathing than if we do chest breathing. That's shallow breathing. All right? So next time you have anxiety, breathe with your belly and hold it a little and breathe out and slow everything down. They use that in the military.
The diaphragm, it's inside of the rib cage, right?
Yeah, it's deep there.
Is that the only muscle that's inside of the rib cage? Or is that?
Well, yeah, to that level, going front and back like that, yeah.
Okay.
Then the other ones go like that, up and down. And then down here we have, but again, not this way. We got them on the surface.
But that's not the biggest muscle.
The diaphragm?
Yeah.
No, it's the claw.
Okay.
The vasti muscles are the biggest ones. Power, from a power perspective. And then we got, so we're finished up here, then we go down below and we got the gut. And then we got a few muscles around the gut. We got to compress this. We don't have ribs, so we have to use muscles to make sure none of this stuff is falling out. So we have to have muscles all around. The other thing, though, that's really good is this is liquidy, this is airy, kind of. This is stable on its own, this not. But then this here, these muscles are the ones that help us create stability of the core. And if I have stability of this core, I have much less likelihood of getting hurt. Because when my core is stable and I can walk with a stable core. It's a little stiff looking, but I can run and I'm like stable here. And my joints move, but they don't move excessively out here. But when I'm wobbly here and I'm running around, like all these joints have to move very excessively. And they get more hurt. And so that's one reason why having a strong core is helpful and important. I think of it like the Coke can. You know, the Coke can with the fluid inside, you can step on that thing, it's not going to do anything. But if that fluid is not, it's instead of the bubbles push out, the stomach mold pushes in. But in a Coke can, when the bubbles are not there anymore, you can break it with no force at all. So that's the core. That's sort of how I visualize how important that core stuff is to really make a solid thing here. So anyway, we have a few muscles that help us with that. Before we do the muscles, have you noticed when you look at the front, here's my thing, at a 6-pack or an 8-pack, you have a line that goes up and down. And that's a central tendon that all these muscles anchor into. Because if you actually take this first off here, you take this top off, you go to the side, let me see. You see you got these muscles on the side that go this way, and then some of them go the other way, this way like that, and they're attached too. And so underneath, they all go into the central line, and that's called the linea alba. Linea alba.
So then basically everyone just has abs, but then it's kind of like it's just so how do people train this muscle if they are like just trying to get abs then?
Oh, the six packs?
Yeah. How does it because then it's hidden under like layers of skin, like fat and all of that. So then
Yeah, I don't know how trainable the six pack really
Well, then-
is, genetically
like-
speaking.
yeah, but then when it's visible then why is that possible? Like why is that?
Why is it visible?
Yeah.
Or what does do it? What makes it?
Yeah, because if it's like, I mean, the muscle is basically it shows like a six pack. So like why?
Yeah, let me answer that in a moment. You got similar?
I was gonna say, I think it's because if you don't have, if you starve yourself, there's no fat on top of it.
Yeah.
And you're working them, the muscles get bigger and weigh a little bit more and protrude a little bit, but if you're like, don't have any fat on top of it, yeah, you can smaller as hell. But
Yeah,
it's, I mean, we all have them, but we haven't.
Yeah, but I'm also not sure to what extent are they protruding the same with everybody. Like even below, behind the adiposity, you know. I'm not sure is there a genetic component with that. I'm sure there is I do think reading a male-female difference. I do think reading from that with the different hormone exposure over time, or the testosterone not being there. But when I take, but to answer that question, let's just go to that right now. The top layer is the rectus abdominis. Let's see, here we go. The rectus abdominis, that's the top layer. And what is really a cool muscle. So it's the top muscle. So it wants to help us do this motion, right?
Yeah.
Bending forward, contracting, and hold things up. And so the coolness about the six pack is these are actually tendons. So you end up having not just one big long muscles, you end up having one muscle, two muscle, three muscle, four muscle. They all contract.
So then that
And they
makes
all
it
help
stronger?
contract it stronger as a unit.
Yeah.
As a whole unit. So it's kind of like little muscles pulling on this inscription here, they call it sometimes, right? Where that's like a middle of the rope. They just pull from both sides, and so that makes it much stronger.
Yeah.
And you can train that muscle as a totality from what I understand, is by training the top portion. So you don't have to engage lower muscles that are the hip flexors that can give you back pain.
Yeah.
When you do sit-ups. You know, so that's the challenge with sit-ups over there, right? You have to be careful with that. So that's the rectus abdominis. If I go deeper, then I get into the oblique muscles. And so I got one here on the outside that brings the fibers from the outside downward and inward. So that's like right here. Like I go down and I feel like if I look at the fibers, you can see this, you feel like you put your finger in your palm, the hand's palm. So if you look at the fibers, that's what I want you to see. That's the external oblique. The fibers go this way. And then on the other side, or here lower down in, we have a deeper lying muscle. On these models, you can see, because you see a little bit of bone coming out on the side here, the white stuff. On the other side, you don't see that. So you know that one is, this muscle is removed on this side. So it's, I know when you know it's a little tricky. They're always bilateral the same. They just take some off so we can see them. And so on this side, then we have fibers that, look at that. These fibers go this way. These fibers go this way. So they're different directions. If I lay them over top of one another, it's like I have this angle, this layer of like a fat meshwork that I'm creating. And so I have these two muscles. One is that external oblique, and one is that internal oblique. And you get a really strong stomach wall on the side. Side planks. Next week, or this week, or so, is the health, the evaluation, what is it? One is the injury prevention thing. The side plank is what we measure there. And if the side, we can't hold it well enough, then that helps us understand that we may have a little area of weakness for injury. You know, maybe our core is not that strong, for example. So that's what we're going to do in the health kit there. And then deepest to the last muscle that we have, I think that's the last muscle. Deepest to all of those muscles, we have one. If you turn this chest plate around, you have one that goes under parallel to the floor, like a cross. And wraps the whole thing around, like wraps this whole can of gut and can push it together. That's called the transverse abdominis. And that muscle is skinny as can be, but it's one of the most important muscles that help with core. That's why I put this up. Want to build some core? Here you go. Go on a ball and move up and down and keep it stiff and straight and don't wobble. That will create some core. As an example. Yeah.
You said it wraps around.
Yeah, it goes around. Like here. The stuff it wraps around the gut. Like, yeah, you can see it here too. Look. See, that's a cross section. So that's looking down like this way. And so you see this is the front. That's the rectus abdominis. That's that linea alba going up and down. And then these are these outer muscles coming in. And the deepest one is the transverse abdominis. Goes all the way around from the back to the front. And so when that contracts, it squeezes that gut together. I don't know. A lot of little details. But that's all we got for the muscles. Do you have any questions with them?